Hi, I'm Matt Williams. Welcome to Glimpses, where we talk about life, love, creativity, and all that spiritual stuff. My guest today is a remarkably talented actor. You may know him for his roles as Angel Batista on Dexter, or as Enrique Morales on the HBO prison drama series Oz, and numerous films, numerous television appearances. And recently he starred on Broadway in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play Cost of Living. He is an amazing talent, and he's always the coolest guy in the room. David Zayas, welcome to Glimpses.
Very, very kind of you. Thank you.
No,
Matt. It's such a
you
pleasure.
walk in, the cool factor just kind of ripples through the room.
Well, I got a lot to match as soon as I walk in. Everybody here is pretty cool.
Okay. So I have to start with this. You were a New York City police officer for 15 years.
Yes.
And you were a beat cop.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, how did that inform your acting? How did that shape you as a human being? What did you learn about humanity? I mean, a beat cop in New York?
Yeah, I started in the mid-'80s, first starting out in Washington Heights at the height of the crack epidemic, so it was
Oh my gosh.
a very busy time over there. But, I try to go into every situation, see what I could bring to it, see how I can, bring kindness to it, bring light to it, bring order to it. And so it was an opportunity for me to observe a lot of characters, a lot of people and me finding out where they were at that moment that I met them.
Right.
Whether they were angry, whether they were high, whether they were happy, whether they were drunk, whether they were, sad, and so then you start learning characteristics of people and start to read body language and start to look into their eyes and try to see where they're coming from, whether it's something that they need help or some violence or some kind of anger.
Right.
And so I feel like that really helped me in finding a lot of the characters that I got when I started acting.
Well, but reading people, my niece is married to a police officer in Evansville, Indiana, and he said something to me. I go, when you go into an intense situation where someone's high or upset or violent, I go, how do you handle that? And he said, the first thing I usually try and say is, good people make bad choices. Mm-hmm. You just made a bad choice.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're a bad person. Let's talk about it. Right. And I thought, wow, that's an approach, because that kind of diffuses everything.
It diffuses everything. You find out exactly what happened. Can I give you an example?
Oh, I would love to hear an example.
So, driving up the West Side Highway in my patrol car, I also worked as a cop, usually midnights when I started acting in the patrol car. Okay. And we see a car slowly just hit the wall. He was driving slowly, and he hit the wall. So we stopped, we approached him. The man was obviously intoxicated, and he was belligerent. And then I look at his dashboard, and I see a prayer card. And it's his son's funeral he just came from.
Oh, my God.
Right? His son had just died from AIDS. And so that immediately, I observe that, and I immediately understand what's going on.
Right.
And hopefully, it doesn't really happen often, but that's when you use your discretion. Mm-hmm. Do you want to just lock this man up? He didn't hit another car. He hit the wall. He messed up his own car.
Right.
Can we park the car, take him home, and let the insurance deal with it? The proper thing would be to arrest him.
Right.
I didn't do that. I got in trouble for that. But I felt I made the right decision in parking the car, taking him home.
I agree. I mean, that's a human thing. And you said
to his ex-wife, which he said was his wife, and his ex-wife's like, "Why are you bringing him here?" I said, "Well, I'm just trying to do the right thing." And next thing you know, she's calling the police, and I'm getting in trouble. But that's okay. It's a choice that I took responsibility for. But under the circumstances, I didn't feel like arresting him is going to help the situation at all.
But what I'm gleaning is as a police officer, you really have to tune in. You notice, you said body language, you noticed that prayer card.
Yeah.
You saw it was his son. So that's the essence of a good actor, being tuned in on the other person and reading their body language and looking into their eyes and responding.
Yeah, it always came from the point of view of, yes, I am protecting myself by getting information that will help me make the decision faster. But I'm also getting information that will help me help this person as properly as I can.
Right.
And making certain decisions under the circumstances that hopefully will lead to a positive outcome.
Were you ever afraid? Were you ever really scared on the job? Or
a lot. Yeah. Many times. I remember chasing this young man. He had a gun. Wasn't shooting at me. He was shooting. I don't know what they were. It wasn't shooting at someone. I think he was trying to shoot at targets. And he saw me, and he ran. And I was young. I was fast. I said, and I started chasing him. I chased him into an abandoned building. And then I stopped in the vestibule. And I'm like, wait a second. I have an audition tomorrow for Law and Order. What am I doing here chasing this kid with a gun? And so I never caught him. But it was those kind of moments that pop up into you, when you're doing. But there was no fear until I realized something happens. I'm not going to make my audition tomorrow.
And did you get the part?
I did get the part.
Okay, good. I'm glad he didn't shoot you, or else you would.
And that's another thing. I didn't feel like he would.
Really?
I could be wrong, and but I'm saying that I always sense danger. It's almost like, if I'm in a restaurant and I hear two people talking, I know if it's an argument. I know if it's not going to end well. I know what's going on. It's like I can't help but being nosy just so that I can get the information about what the environment is about.
Well, I would call that street smarts. Now, you grew up in the Bronx.
Yes.
Right? And that was a pretty rough period in the Bronx when you grew up. So I'm imagining you learned to read people, the streets, pretty early in your young life, right?
I did. I was also so introverted that I was labeled just an observer. I was an observer. I observed people. I observed my classmates. I observed my teachers, their response to certain things. I never really spoke much. It was mostly just observing. And I think in that observing, because I wanted to be prepared in any situation, even when I was 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So...
you know what's amazing? I think I've worked with a lot of actors through the years. And usually the very best actors I've worked with are introverts.
Yeah.
They really are, until the camera rolls or they step out on the stage.
Exactly. I could be sick with the flu, coughing, hacking up half my lungs. And as soon as they go, okay, places, I'm miraculously cured. I mean, I had that experience in the show that we did in St. George that you produced. I remember I came in to do reshoots. I got the swine flu.
Yes.
You guys had to stop production. Thank you very much, because you guys were so gracious. You had to stop production for like a week. And then even when I got on the set, I was like in bad shape. But as soon as the camera started rolling, I said, I feel better. And then it cut, and I'm like, I feel like...
I want to talk about that, because you are. It's interesting. You're usually cast as a cop or the criminal. Mm-hmm. Almost any time I see David Zayas in a movie, he's wielding a gun at some point, right? But I think what surprised me and surprised a lot of people is how funny you are. On St. George, you played Danny Trejo's son.
Daddy.
And you two together, and Danny Trejo is one of the funniest people on the planet, right?
He is.
And the two of you together were always so funny. And I said, this very intense cop, criminal, archetypical, actor is really funny. I was surprised at your humor. Where did that humor come from?
I've always had, look at things in a humorous way. I love the whole, I would say the humor of life, everyday life. And if you can observe it and identify it, and talk about it, or even make fun of yourself about it,
Right.
it really just calms everything down. You know, I always felt I can do it's just, I just started out as either a cop or a criminal or some kind of, corrupt politician or something
Yeah,
like that.
you also played the corrupt politician.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I left that one out.
So, but any opportunity I try to do comedy, I just, I feel like there's comedy in, in some of the even some of the most amazing sitcoms. Yes, they're comedic, but they're comedic because it really deals with an issue that people deal with every day.
Right.
And you touch that issue.
It's identifiable.
It's identifiable,
Yeah.
and it could be dark too. But it's so fun. I love doing comedy. I really am appreciative of that opportunity to do that. I had a lot of fun.
Now, your dad was a sanitation worker,
Yes.
right? How did he feel about you going into acting?
When I was 12, 13, I went to see Dog Day Afternoon in the movies.
Oh, yeah.
And
Al Pacino.
Al Pacino and John Cazale and
Yeah.
Charles Durning, all these great.
Right.
And I remember in the front row, and my cousins were in the back with their girlfriends, and and I saw the movie, and they went, "You want to see it again?" I said, "Those are the days you could stay and see another showing of it."
Right.
So I saw it twice in a row, and after that, I'm like, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to be involved in something like that. I want to be
At 13?
At 13, I said,
Okay.
I want to be involved. I don't know if it's going to be acting. I had a bad speech impediment, when I was 13. So I remember going to my dad afterwards saying, "Dad, I want to be an actor," and I couldn't get that T out. I said, "Dad, I want to be an actor," because I was nervous, And finally, he just said, "Son, you go take the city tests. They're good, you can make some, a good living, get some benefits." And it kind of like, it kind of discouraged me a little bit.
Yes.
Like, not his fault. He's trying to do the right thing by his son.
He wants you to have a
Yeah,
secure
exactly.
job. Right.
So I kind of put it in the back burner for a long time
Okay.
until, 1990 when I was about 28 years old, and I was getting divorced from my first marriage.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, what am I going to do now? And then I went, stupid. Yeah, now you follow whatever it is, the passion that you were talking about. So I started going to acting school
At 28.
at 28.
Okay.
And I
And where
went-
did you study?
I studied with this wonderful teacher. His name is Ernie Martin, who used to have the Ernie Martin Studio Theater on 43rd Street. 311 West 43rd Street, which are the offices of Manhattan Theater Club now, and there's a couple of other theaters there.
Okay.
And so I started going to school there, and like after the first few classes, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I'm supposed to take the sergeant's test next week. I should be concentrating on that.
Right.
And I remember Ernie Martin saying, "Are you kidding me? You can't. I could see this is where you live.
He saw something.
Yeah, he saw something.
He knew.
Yeah, and he encouraged me to stick with it. And not soon after that, I joined this theater company, Labyrinth Theater Company.
Right.
At the time, it was Lab. And I was one of the 13, 14 original members of Labyrinth Theater Company with these amazing artists, including my wife, Liza Cologne Zayas, And so then from there, just, you're in the room with a lot of these young artists, with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Stephen Adley Girgis and Sam Rockwell and Judy Reyes and Luna Velez. I mean, it's just so many people that already had a head start on me, so I had to catch up.
Okay.
So I said so I worked hard, and I'm still with that company.
I'm going to talk about Labyrinth, but I want to talk about Ernie because he saw
Okay.
something in you.
Yeah.
And what method did he use or employ to bring that out in you? I mean, you hear, there's the method, and then there's Meisner, there's Stella Adler, all the great teachers. What was his approach to acting?
Well, Ernie was involved with the Actors Studio, which was more of a method kind of
Right.
Stanislavski kind of. But he pointed out always in the beginning, he goes, "There's some of that you're not going to connect to.
Right.
So you have to be open-minded and just take whatever's going to be useful to you." And so, because then like a year and a half later, I started studying with William Esper.
Yes.
And he had a
Legendary.
he had a whole different approach. And I realized, I could use a lot of this and I could use a lot of this, and that helps me. There's a technique that I can use on both sides. It's not one or the other. It could be both. It could be, and so I was lucky.
You found your own,
yeah.
You cherry picked and then found your own approach.
Right.
Now, as we were settling in to do this podcast, you said a good play always grabs you. What is it about a play that grabs you? Is it the theme, the character, the world? What?
I should have rephrased that saying, a good playwright always grabs me.
Okay.
I think what's on the words, like, when I read, when the first time I read Cost of Living.
Right.
I couldn't put it down, and I started, I never really look at it when I make a first read through of how I make acting choices. I read about the sensitivity, how complex this character is.
Complexity of the character, yeah.
Yeah, and the story. And if all that grabs me, I'm hooked. And it becomes like it gets to a point where I have to do this. I really need to do this, even a workshop, just to see how it develops.
Right.
And there was a lot of that with Stephen Alligirgis.
Right.
He wrote some things. I go, this is not just some street thugs, saying bad words. They're really saying something deep. They're saying something important.
Right.
They're saying something that other people can relate to.
About humanity.
About everything. About your insecurities, about your shame, about your pride, and so when I see that in a play, it grabs me.
Okay.
And I want to explore and see where it takes me.
And then as you read it over multiple times, do you feel the character sort of creeping into your soul, or do you start to make choices, or do you just allow that to evolve? What happens?
I try to make choices right away.
Okay.
When we start rehearsing, once we get it. Most of the choices I make are not correct. So I learned the hard way. In the first week of rehearsal, I try to make some choices to see and I immediately can sense when it doesn't work.
Okay.
But then you find it. Then you find what works. It's usually in relation to the other actor. It's usually in relation to what the other actor is saying to you, how they're saying it to you, how they feel about it, how the actor feels about this. You talk.
Right.
And sometimes that changes my perspective in a good way, in a more fulfilling way. It just adds that layer to what you're trying to build on it. And so there's nothing like, going in front of, a group of people and sharing a space that for that particular night, no one else is going to experience it but the people in the audience and the people on stage.
But you said finding it with the other actor. I go back to you being a police officer and being observant and reading body language and tuning into people and being sensitive to that other person. And I understand what you're talking about. When you're acting with someone, it's almost like throwing the tennis ball back and forth. That energy starts going, and then something else happens when the two energies match.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and you don't really know what happens until it happens, and then you go, and then you identify it, and I think the trap is you always try to recreate it somewhere else, and you can't. It has to be a new moment, and so, it's
I'm going to ask about that, because you had a pretty substantial run on Broadway. You're doing the show, 8 times a week?
Yes.
How do you keep it fresh? Every night is a different audience. Every night is a different atmosphere.
Well, the superficial answer to that is fear.
Okay. Fear is a good motivator.
Every night, that moment right before, when you hear the music start, for example, for Cost of Living, I open up with like an 8-page monologue.
Yeah, you're sitting on a stool
I just got to go on a stool talking to the audience.
Right.
So right before that sound comes and I walk out, it feels like I'm jumping out of a plane. With a parachute, but I'm jumping out of a plane.
Right.
That's what it feels like until I sit down and the lights come up and you start. Then everything takes over and you're able, if you're prepared, everything comes out, and you try to go moment to moment in every performance. There has been plays where I'm like, after the 10th performance, I'm like, I I don't know if I've reached the max of trying to. But most of the plays that I've done, I can't. After I finish a performance, I'm like, thank God I'm doing it again tomorrow.
Because you can find new stuff,
Yeah.
different nuance, different layers.
Yeah, so it's an excitement where then you always know, like, tomorrow I'm going to try, tomorrow I'm going to do it. It's a new experience, it's a new audience, it's a new energy, it's a new vibe, regardless if it's the same show or not. There's always a different, vibe to it. There was a funny moment in Cost of Living where they talk about Michael Phelps, the gold medalist,
right?
Swimmer. And everyone gets a laugh. Every night gets a laugh. People love it. It's a great, great joke. And it's set up so nicely. We did a play where we did a performance for all students. And when Michael Phelps came, there was nothing. They didn't know who Michael Phelps was.
Swamp sounds.
They were like, who's Michael Phelps?
Yeah.
So you haven't heard somebody go, who's Michael Phelps? It's like, so it's all timing different. And you almost feel, you could feel the pulse of the audience, and you can just join in on that.
It's kind of like surfing. You're each audience is a different wave, and you have to ride it a little differently. And and you're doing that. You're riding that wave, but while at the same time being totally immersed in the moment with the other actor. So it's almost like a sixth sense that's kind of guiding you, right?
Anything. That's the one thing wonderful about theater is that anything can happen. A person had a stroke in the middle of the show. We had to stop. I thought it was something I messed up on, but I realized, but the person's fine. He didn't. He recovered. They took him in the ambulance.
So they stopped the show.
They stopped the show, and then we waited about 20 minutes. The ambulance came, took him. He was fine. He had a minor stroke, so it wasn't,
And then you had 20 minutes to kind of decompress.
Right.
But then you had to pick it back up.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's you'd be surprised what you can do when you have to do it.
Well, I think this is where your craft comes in. If you're a trained actor, whatever happens, you can always rely on your craft to carry you through the night,
yes.
right?
Yeah. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
I think even more so than craft. Well, I think everyone needs, the craft. I think more so is preparation.
Preparation, okay.
If you're prepared, if you go, any set, whether it's TV, film, theater, if you walk in and you're not prepared, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long night. It's going to be, you're going to get stressed. The more you prepare, the more relaxed you can be, and then just go for those moments that happen moment to moment on that performance.
Yeah.
So it's more preparation for me. The more, when I got this play, I made DJ come over.
DJ, your son.
My son. So you got to go over this. He probably knows the play better than I do now.
Right.
So it's like, but I had to be prepared with the technicality of it, which is learning your lines.
Right.
Which is knowing where you are on stage. And those are things you could go over and prepare. And then as long as you have that, like, secondhand, then you can go out there and, find new things and make it interesting for you and therefore make it interesting to the audience.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Labyrinth. You've mentioned that. It's a lot of incredibly talented people. What is Labyrinth Theater Company for the people listening, if they don't know, and how does Labyrinth differ from other theater companies?
Well, we started out as Lab, which is Latino Actors Base.
Okay.
And we started getting together every week and started, doing theater games and jamming and see how if we could create some kind of bond among us so that then we can maybe, do plays in the future together as a, And what I found to be, soon after, they were like, well, you know what? Let's open it up. Let's open it up to everybody to come in, and as long as they have the same, the same mindset as us and what we want to do.
Same passion, the same desires to tell the story.
Basically, we wanted to do plays that represented New York City.
Okay.
In every aspect of life, whether it be poverty, middle class. We wanted to include everybody, every ethnicity, just to represent the melting pot that New York City is.
Right.
And that's when we started doing that, and we changed the name to Labyrinth Theater Company. And we've made, this in 1992 was our first year, and this is the 30th anniversary. I think this is 31st. Yeah, 30th or 31st. And we've had ups and downs, as we all know about the not-for-profit world of theater. Yeah, a lot of ups and downs, but we've maintained. I think what keep us surviving is the connection of the members and the love and respect, and also the bond that we've created over the past 30 years.
Sure.
And that's what we try to do.
So we're talking about the Labyrinth Theater Company, and I'd like you to just mention a few of the titles of the plays that have come out of that company.
There's some interesting titles.
Okay.
You get titles like Race, Religion, and Politics that Stephen Adly Girgis wrote. Den of Thieves.
Okay.
In Arabia, We'd All Be Kings, which was a play we did in the 90s that Philip Seymour Hoffman directed.
Right.
About Times Square and the changing of Times Square. Like, when Giuliani, in the mid-90s, when it was changing from the seedy old Times Square to like the Disney-fied,
Absolutely.
Times Square. So it's about that. And then, and we did a play, we explored religion. We explored religion in prison. So Stephen wrote a play called Jesus Hopped the A Train.
Right.
So we did that, and that was a journey. That was probably one of the best plays I've ever done. Like, it's one of those where you would look forward to doing it every night. Our Lady of 121st Street, the theme of
great,
right,
wonderful play.
That, and then when I did Stephen and the company kept doing plays like A Motherfucker with the Hat.
Right.
You could beep this out, right?
Which was on Broadway.
Which was on Broadway.
Right.
And Little Flower of East Orange, or The Last Days of Judas Iscariot, again, exploring the religion. And, what we had was Stephen having a great voice of different ethnicities. I mean, he's half Egyptian, half Irish, yet he has the pulse and the ear of every dialect in New York City because he observed all of them.
Right.
And he has the talent to express it in his writing. So we always try to go towards what's risky.
Okay.
And that's what I love about Labyrinth.
Take chances.
They take
Push
chances.
the edge. Right.
Yeah. We've fallen on our faces many times.
That's okay.
It's okay. You get up, and then one works, and it's great. And so, in the last couple of years, it's kind of been like a rebuilding, kind of get, more people involved. And it's difficult especially with pandemic and everything that's happened.
Sure.
But we're still hanging in there. So.
Okay. I've got a quote here that I pulled off the internet. It's you. You said, art has to be reflective of our society. So what do you mean by that? If it reflects our society? You're talking about holding up the mirror? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about what's happening in society today has to be... I have a problem with censorship. Right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a playwright, even a young playwright now, and he writes about what he sees and what he observes,
right.
What he writes today now gets judged politically correct or not.
Right.
And I think that's such a mistake. I think you should write what you want because it's what you're trying to express.
Right.
Miguel Piñero wrote Short Eyes about prison. Wasn't a feel-good play.
Not
it's the reality of what was happening. It's not a...
And Short Eyes being a child molester in prison.
In prison.
Yes.
And so I think that... and that was, what was going on in his world at the time. It has to, I feel like from the writer's part, it has to reflect what's happening today. What's happening, whether with social media, what's happening with the pandemic and the protocols and the shutdown.
Right.
All that, what's happening in the, in the trans community now that they're coming out, they want to be represented. You know, so I really feel that it's the responsibility of the writer, the director, and the actor to show a slice of life of what's reflective of our society today, or if you're writing about 1990, what was reflective back then,
right?
Which sometimes turns around to be the same thing that's reflective today,
right?
I think that's what I meant mostly with that.
Okay. And art in general, but specifically the theater arts, the art, I mean.
All art. I would say music, the art world with paintings and sculpture. I mean, all that, the ones that I feel work, and they don't always work at the time that this artist is alive.
Right.
It could be 30 years later when he's gone, and she's gone, and then all of a sudden somebody sees something in it. But I think that in all of art, whether it be music, theater, film, I feel that it's interesting when it's reflective on what's happening either today or a glimpse of what happened when you weren't even around, like The Fabelmans now with Steven Spielberg. I'm a film lover, so even though that took place in the '60s, where I was an infant,
right?
I connected to it because it's about love of film,
right?
And it's reflective on what his vision was and what wouldn't. There's so many things that could have stopped him, and he didn't. He was 13 years old, and and it's so it depends on what it is that you see, and sometimes you don't know it until you see it.
Right.
Sometimes you don't know it until you see it. But that's what I feel that art should reflect that.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears because your son, DJ, told me you were in London in 1985 and inadvertently stumbled into a concert that just happened to be Live Aid.
Yes.
And you sang along with Freddie Mercury.
That's right. Yeah.
How in the world did that happen?
I was getting out of the Air Force.
Okay.
I was stationed in England, and I was processing out. And so the offices, after I, pack and to process out, the offices were in London. So they put me in a hotel in London. And I was there, I think it was, the second week of July or something. And I was there for 3 days before I was to go to Heathrow and fly back for good.
All right.
Coming back to the world.
Done with the Air Force?
Done with the Air Force. And I had that one day, I didn't have nothing to do. I walked out, I went all over the place. You walk in London, you could all of a sudden not know where you're at.
Right.
And I saw this big crowd. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? And I followed the crowd into Wembley Arena, which is around where the hotel was. And we just walked in. There's like hundreds of thousands of people coming in. So I just walked in, and all of a sudden this concert came on, and got to see David Bowie, got to see,
this iconic moment with Freddie Mercury when he's singing with the crowd and they're going, it's, you can pull it up on YouTube right now. It was
brilliant. Stopped the show. It stopped.
Absolutely.
It stopped. I was 21, so I'm there looking at all the pretty girls, right? I'm not even looking so much at the artistry. Like, if I could do it again, I would be concentrated on the artistry on stage.
Right.
And the iconic music.
And not the babes in the...
Yeah. So but when Queen came out, everyone stopped and watched. That was a very, very surreal moment for me, and it was pretty exciting. At the time, you don't know how iconic that's going to be. You have no idea how iconic. Like years later, there's going to be a video of this whole concert and what it did to raise money for famine. It's just one of those Forrest Gump moments, I call it.
Well, when you're making history, you're not aware of it at the time.
Yes.
Only in hindsight that you realize you were a part of history.
Right.
So I have to ask you, do you feel blessed?
100%. I feel blessed. I'm if I was to go tomorrow, I feel one of the most amazing lives. I've had many lives.
Yes, you have.
It's hard for me to do. I have to consciously stop and look back at some of the experiences that I've been lucky enough to be a part of.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, that may have been partly me, but it was partly fate. It was partly circumstance. It was the one thing I'm good at is identifying good energy and bad energy. Even in show business, especially in show business.
Right.
So if I feel somebody has a good energy, usually is someone with that's inquisitive, that's kind. There's I'm always attracted to that energy. And there's that other energy that's not so, and I always know how to stay away from that.
Right.
At least to the best of my ability. And so because of that, that translates to having great experiences in art.
Right.
In theater, in film, TV, and just everyday life with the people that share that same love and passion that you have for what you do. So yeah, I think that's the.
Do you feel it's higher power, destiny, whatever you want to call it? Because I understand what you're talking about, energy. And listen, that's kind of, excuse me, kind of the theme of today is a street kid from the Bronx learning to read, the introvert reading energy, the police officer reading energy, being in a room, working with another actor, reading energy. And that is a real gift. And that feels as if it was just kind of bred into you. You were born with that, it seems.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And it's never the energy is, I guess, what's helped in that for me, because I've seen both kinds. So
Right.
when I feel that energy, it's not like, okay, I got one over, I'm done to take advantage. It's more like, I want to be inclusive. It's going to teach me many things, and if I approach it that way, it's usually much more rewarding. So it's really one of those. But yes, I feel extremely blessed.
Okay.
In everything that's gone, including my life outside of theater, outside of show business. I mean,
Liza, your wife, who's on The Bear, one of my favorite news shows.
She's shooting it today. Yeah.
Yeah, in Chicago.
A
Great show. I got hooked, and you've got DJ, your son, who's also in the business. How do you feel about your son being in the business?
I always want them to do what they're passionate about.
Okay.
The only thing I instilled in them is that if you fall on your face, just get up and keep going.
Right.
You're gonna fall on your face. If you go through the whole thing and everything happens and you don't fall on your face and you don't feel stress or pressure and everything, there's something going on. Yeah. I'm always a little skeptical when things go so perfect. It's like, what do you mean? They offered me this job. They offered me this job and they're gonna do this, and I'm always skeptical. Like, what's the catch?
Okay.
What's the catch? And what I don't understand is the catch is what you bring to it, how you approach it, And I think the vibe, and if you get a room, you get 5 actors, and there's a great play, and those 5 actors walk in there. If there's one actor that's not, feeling it, or he's just thinking about himself or herself,
Right.
you can feel it right away, and it doesn't mesh. I always try to keep an open mind and do my job, to the best of my ability.
Right. Okay.
I don't like to, unless it's a circumstance where you improv, I like to say what's written and make
As
it.
a writer, I thank you.
Yeah, I want to say what's written, and I want to, even if it doesn't flow in me, make it flow in you. That's your job as an actor. So I have to try and make it like, or in a movie when it comes with the director, what's your vision? Because that may not be my vision, but I can turn it into that.
Right.
And make it, make it understandable to me to try and get what your vision of the movie is. Because I'm just a piece of it.
Right.
And so I think that's an important aspect of it. And so I try to tell my kids, and both my daughter, also Liana, who has, my 2 grandkids.
Right, you're a grandpa, a G-dad.
Yeah, that's it. Papa, they call me.
Papa.
Because they said, I got to wait till I'm senior citizen before you call me grandpa. But, she's also a talented writer. She knows how to handle her business in many ways, though she's not involved actively in show business like DJ directing and, being involved in a lot of productions. I love it. I think that it's great to see somebody who actually grew up in this business, because when they were kids, they were hanging out in, rehearsal rooms and
Sure.
backstage and dressing rooms while I was on stage because, I was a single parent for a long time.
Right.
So it was interesting to know, and I think they observed what it is, the passion, the love of what it is,
The dedication, and the work it takes to succeed. You don't just waltz in and become an actor like you on all these series and on Broadway. It takes incredible amount of work.
Yes, and it never. What I love about it never gets easier.
Yeah. I say that about writing.
Yeah.
You think as you get older, it's going to get so. It doesn't. It's always
a struggle, but that's what
That's what gives you the juice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't get easier. It doesn't. I mean, experience helps in handling situations.
Right.
Your experience helps in helping others, helping other actors try to go through whatever they're going through. So experience helps, but ultimately you got to go do the work.
Right.
You got to just go dig in and get in there like everyone else. When I do plays with people that I've looked at as stars. Like I did a play with Jimmy Smits. I'm like, Jimmy Smits, man, I've been watching Jimmy Smits since. And in doing the play, you see the work that he does. It does. Yeah. It's not just it's work.
Right.
And watching him work, I'm like, okay, that doesn't change. That's always going to be there.
Right.
Regardless of how successful you are, you always got to do that. You got to take the same route. The shortcuts, they may work maybe right away, but then eventually
And the work goes back to preparation.
Preparation, yes.
Being prepared. I want to talk about glimpses because the book that I wrote, Glimpses, is talking about finding little glimpses of God in your daily life. And by God, I'm talking about moments of kindness, unexpected compassion, tenderness. You talked about earlier kindness in the light. Do you see glimpses in your day as you knock around New York?
All the time. All the time, or in this business. There's a great actor that just passed away, Tom Sizemore.
Yes.
And he had a troubled life. He had a troubled life with drugs. He had a troubled life. In the 90s, one of my first acting gigs was Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead. It's a movie that he did in the 90s. And I had 3 or 4 scenes in this movie. I played this cop that comes in to help somebody who
got the cop in there again.
The cop in there again. And we were shooting this scene where you walk in, where I walk in with the board to help bring the body out. Into the elevator. Me, Nicolas Cage, Tom Sizemore, and the other actor, Michael, that was doing the scene with me. And we did 3, 4 takes. Great. Mr. Scorsese, okay, we're going to move on. And Tom Sizemore said, hey, Marty, could I get one more for me? Can I go one more? And he goes, oh, yeah, okay, all right. And then Tom Sizemore came up to me and said, hey, man, listen, none of those shots, they can see your face. The board, you had the board blocking your face on every one of those takes. He goes, this one, just do his so you could, whatever couple of lines you got, at least they'll see you. And I was like, oh, cool, okay, thanks. And I did it, and I just found that to be
very kind.
Just such a wonderful, kind moment that I'll never forget. And, later on, he had the trouble. I said, that's not just him. Everyone's got this sense of helping and camaraderie and kindness that, maybe they express it differently, but I thought that was one of the kind moments that's happened to me, So yeah, those kind of things happen, on occasion. And those are from people that you admire.
Sure.
And, or you hear bad things. I gotta be careful with that. Most of the time when I hear bad things about people, I prepare myself, but I stay open. 8 times out of 10, it's the opposite. It's a wonderful experience.
Yes.
And I don't know what that has to do with, but it's like really the opposite of what people, oh, this guy does this, or she does this. I'm going to judge for myself, and I'm going to see what's what. Because I will bring it up to the surface right away if it is.
Right.
you know.
Right.
But I've had amazing experiences. Very, very few negative experiences. I've been very lucky.
Well, I think because you come, talking about energy, you come at it with a positive attitude. You come at it as you even said just a few minutes ago, I'm a piece of this. It's not about me, it's about the story.
Right.
And I'm a piece of the story, and my contribution is to tell the story.
Right.
And I think that's why you work constantly, because you are there to serve the story, the vision, as you said, the director's vision. And that is why when I IMDb you and I go through the list, I can't even count how many films you've been in, how many television series. So you're doing something right, David. You're doing something
I
right.
even look at it and go, was I in that? And I go, oh, yeah.
Yeah, have you ever been flicking through at night and scrolling through and see yourself and go, wait a minute, what year was that?
I usually change the channel, yeah. When I hear myself, I'm like, oh.
Can you watch yourself?
Not all the time.
Okay.
Most of the time, no.
Okay.
Like, during Dexter, my whole family would watch Dexter. I would go to the next room and watch football, Sunday Night Football.
Right.
Because I knew the story. It's because when you watch yourself,
Yep.
that's why theater is wonderful in many ways. But when you watch yourself on film and TV, all you see is yourself acting.
Yes.
You know?
Okay. Yes.
And so I have to it takes a moment for me to separate that so I can see the story, see if I did the job. Because right away I said, oh, why did I say that word like that? Why did that come out of my mouth like that?
Right.
And so I just recently did a Bob's Burger voice, and I came in and I was like stretch, making sure that, and they go, no, we want to talk the way you talk. That's what we want. That's why. And I'm like, I don't know how to take that, but I'll just talk the way I talk, and see.
Well,
what happens.
I think that's true of not only actors but human beings. We oftentimes feel we need to be more than what we are, or better than what we are. When if we just stop and realize, I'm enough. If I'm honest, I'm authentic, and I'm kind, I'm enough. I don't have to be more, right?
And you are, because I mean, like during that process of St. George, you were extremely kind to me, and everyone on set was wonderful. But my correspondence with you was like, oh, this is a good man. This is somebody. All right. Because it's not always like that.
Well, I always look at it, and I go from the craft service person to the camera person. You need everyone. Right. And if I were on the other side of the table, I would want to be treated this way. Right. And it's that simple. Just do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Just be kind and be respectful. And when people do a good job, let them know. It's that simple.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah, everyone is, you got to treat everyone as important as you. And you got to make sure that, you could always also feel when someone is down, it's okay to try and bring them up and make them feel better.
Right.
I see that all the time on sets. I remember this person was going to see a play. One of the makeup ladies were going to see a play, but because of schedule, they had to work on Saturday. Because they had to shoot on Saturday. Mm-hmm. They were devastated. And the actor that had to work on Saturday for his own schedule realized what had happened and then got them tickets themselves for Sunday night for her and her husband. Ooh. And at the Saturday, he goes, what are you doing tomorrow? She goes, nothing. He goes, here, go with your husband. And got tickets, better seats. And so I saw that, and I'm like, that's really cool. That's going to make her life and her coming into work that much,
right?
Simple
act of kindness.
A simple act of kindness, and it goes a long way. And it goes a long way as you're working too, And if you're working with somebody that maybe did not have enough time to prepare like you did, you got the number one that has to memorize 8 pages every night because they got to go in the next day and shoot, and you come in 2-3 times a week. You have time. You have that day to work on it, and you see that they're overwhelmed. You can take the time to say, hey, I'm here for you, man. Let's work it out. Let's do that. And that goes a long way too, And it's because we're all a part of a team. Like I said, trying to get this story out.
You know, that's true in theater. It's true on film crews, and it's true in life.
Yes.
So, well, David, I want to thank you for being a friend. I want to thank you for being on Glimpses. This has been a treat for me.
Well, it's been a treat for me too. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that's it for this podcast. Thank you for joining us. As you go about your day, I encourage you all to take a little time to look around and catch a glimpse.